Dr. Kathleen Kulp-Hill nació en Haddam, Kansas y estudió en Kansas State University y en la Universidad de Nuevo México, donde recibió su doctorado en filosofía en 1967. La doctora Kathleen Kulp-Hill enseñó español y portugués at the University of Colorado y en Eastern Kentucky University, donde es profesora del Departamento de Foreign Languages and Humanities desde 1969. El conocimiento de portugués y de la cultura portuguesa despertó en ella un interés especial por la literatura de Galicia, España, especialmente la poesía y narrativa de la escritora Rosalía de Castro y la poesía gallego-portuguesa medieval. Kathy ha publicado 2 libros sobre la obra literaria de la poeta gallega Manner and Mood en Rosalía de Castro, A Study of Themes and Styles, 1968 Madrid, España, y Rosalía de Castro, 1977, Boston, Massachusetts. Posteriormente se dedicó completamente al estudio de las cantigas de Santa María, recopiladas por Alfonso X el Sabio. Aparte de un sinnúmero de papers escritos sobre diversas cantigas, finalmente, después de 20 años de arduo trabajo, acabó la traducción completa de esta compilación al inglés. Hasta el día de hoy se han hecho 2 ediciones de esta obra monumental bajo el título de Songs of Holy Mary of Alfonso X the Wise, a translation of the Cantigas de Santa María, United States, Tempe, Arizona, 2000 and 2012. Thank you.
Buenas tardes a todos. Bienvenidos a la sesión en honor a la doctora Kathy Hill. El objetivo principal de organizar esta sesión surgió como una idea para reconocer y felicitar a Kathy por la publicación de la segunda edición de su libro sobre las traducciones de las cantigas de Santa María. Las contribuciones que Kathy ha hecho al campo de los estudios medievales y la literatura hispánica han sido innumerables. Esta sesión solo es un granito de arena que muestra no solamente su pasión por la literatura, sino también la influencia que Kathy ha tenido y seguirá teniendo en muchos de los estudiosos y amantes de la literatura. Los organizadores de esta sesión hemos sido testigos de la curiosidad intelectual de Kathy y los escritos recibidos en honor a ella por los medievalistas, colegas y amigos de Kathy, dan testimonio fiel de esto. El doctor Thomas Lathrop compartió una anécdota que involucra el término hapax, que significa palabra usada solo una vez, que discutió en una de las conferencias a la que asistieron. En ese momento Kathy no sabía del término, pero su curiosidad intelectual la condujo no solamente a investigar el significado del término, sino su uso y el uso que ella podría darle al analizar las cantigas. Y voy a citar textualmente lo que nos mandó el doctor Lathrop. There was something about what Kathy said at the Cincinnati conference that led me to ask her about hapax. She didn't know what that meant, and few people do or did. But at the next conference where we saw each other, I think she gave a paper about hapax in the cantigas and called it by its complete name, hapax legomenon. First is stress. Hapax legomenon means said only once. And incidences of it can be a real problem for literary or philosophical scholars. Anyways, I did appreciate her detailed answer to my question, and that was Kathy. If she didn't know the answer, she will look for it. Esto, queridos colegas, es solo un ejemplo de sus aportaciones intelectuales. Estoy segura que vendrán muchas conferencias y muchas presentaciones donde se continuará haciendo referencia a las aportaciones académicas de Kathy. Para algunos de nosotros que tuvimos el placer de conocerla en un plano más personal, no solo nos impresiona su capacidad intelectual, sino también y sobre todo su calidad humana.
Good afternoon. It is truly an honor and a privilege to have the opportunity to honor Dr. Kathleen Kulp-Hill in this session's homage to her work. We all know that Kathy's internationally renowned scholarship is exemplary and that her work with the Cantigas and Rosalía de Castro were groundbreaking, and she remains an authority and sought-after expert. Her passion for these works inspired countless other scholars and students and continue to inspire us today. Kathy is truly a walking encyclopedia of information. Any questions we ever have had about literature, grammar, history, Spanish, Portuguese, Galicia, Latin America, you name it, plants, trees, anything, and Kathy knew the answer or knew exactly where to find it. Today, I would also like to celebrate Kathy not only as a colleague but as family. All who know her have been witness to her authenticity, integrity, sense of decency, generosity, and great sense of humor. Kathy never says an unkind word about anybody. This is not to say that she is passive, but rather that she approaches conflict with dignity, grace, and sophistication to ensure that issues are resolved with integrity and not by ego-driven emotion. It is in this spirit that we begin this homage to Kathy.
Hay tantas cosas para decir sobre el trabajo intelectual y académico de Kathy que la verdad es que no sé por dónde empezar si tuviera que hacerlo. Quizás algún día lo haga, como lo harán tantos, o quizás sea mejor guardármelo solo para mí como un tesoro delicioso. En cuanto a su traducción de las cantigas, trabajo que nos convoca hoy a sus más allegados y conocidos, también hay mucha tela para cortar, rollos enteros. Acompañé esa traducción por más de 20 años y sé de sus noches en vela entre diccionarios raídos y empolvados de gallego-portugués antiguo, portugués moderno, inglés antiguo y moderno, y variedad de textos de etimologías y raíces, griegas y latinas, e historia de las palabras. También la vi alargar los días y las noches olvidándose de todo y hasta de ella misma, leyendo libros voluminosos de historia de España, Portugal, Brasil, Galicia. Textos críticos y ensayos y reseñas y artículos académicos y notas y comentarios sobre estos cortos poemas dedicados a Santa María. Podría decir que al unísono con Alfonso el Sabio, desentrañando hasta lo más insignificante de la condición humana y de la lengua. ¿Cuántas veces la vi perseguir una palabra desesperada y casi demente? Ya no recuerdo. ¿Y cuántas veces la vi sonreír cuando encontraba la palabra justa, la adecuada, la ideal? Tampoco recuerdo, ni debo, ni quiero. Sé que muchas cosas se perdieron en esa traducción solo para poder ganar otras tantas, para poder conservar el espíritu de la época, el estilo sin tener que sacrificar el contenido, ni el lirismo, ni el humor, ni la burla, ni la ironía, ni el silencio, y esos momentos de contemplación que atraviesan estos textos. No tengo miedo de afirmar que muchos de los poemas traducidos al inglés superan al original o lo enriquecen de matices y de belleza. En cuanto a la obra de Rosalía de Castro, Poesía y Narrativa, a la que también le dedicó buena parte de su vida, tengo que decir sin rodeos y sin temor alguno que nadie como ella logró o ha logrado descender a lo más profundo de la escritura de Rosalía, de su alma, de sus delirios, de sus momentos de paz y luminosidad. Ella, como nadie más, supo escudriñar el corazón de esa romántica moderna, la única escritora de los pueblos de España que se puso a la altura de los románticos ingleses y alemanes. La vi más de una vez citar fragmentos de sus poemas y vi cómo sus ojos se iluminaban y su corazón se llenaba de júbilo, como si hubiera encontrado a la misma Rosalía en cada uno de sus versos, o como si estuviera conversando amigablemente con ella en el barrio. Pero hoy, sin embargo, no estamos aquí para hablar de poesía, ni de literatura, ni de conocimiento. Eso es terreno de los críticos y académicos que todavía tienen una deuda pendiente con la obra de Kathy. Hoy solo quiero destacar el ser humano y maravilloso que es Kathy. Quiero acentuar su generosidad sin límites, no solo la que nacía de su corazón, sino de su conocimiento, o mejor sería decir, su sabiduría. Su capacidad de entrega, su amor ilimitado por todos y por todo, pero especialmente por los más necesitados, por los olvidados, los que se quedan y que dejamos a la vera del camino. Los enfermos, los desamparados, los animales, la naturaleza, sus gatos adorados, sus montañas, su Kansas, sus girasoles, las piedras que coleccionaba, sus cachivaches, sus collares y, en una sola palabra, su amor. Ese tipo de amor que solo se encuentra muy pocas veces en la vida y casi nunca. Ese amor que solo sabe dar sin pedir nada a cambio y que no tiene en el diccionario ni palabra, ni ley, ni definición posible, ni juicio de valor, ni condena. Ese amor que tiene incluso para los resentidos, los oportunistas, enemigos gratuitos y envidiosos de todo tipo que tanto abundan en el tejido del amor y la generosidad disfrazados de palomas excesivamente limpias y perfectas. Recuerdo que cuando la conocí tenía en la pared de su oficina 2 letreros en español que decían: se habla portugués y español, y el que hace la ley hace la trampa. Nunca he olvidado esas 2 oraciones tajantes y precisas, como tampoco voy a olvidar que ya muy enferma, sentada en la mesa del comedor, corregía con claridad y precisión algunos typos y errores insignificantes del corrector de pruebas del libro de las cantigas que quería regalar y dedicar a sus amigos más cercanos. Así que quiero hablar de ella como mejor lo hago, creo. Voy a leer unos poemas cortos que escribí para ella y al final de este homenaje compartiré con ustedes un texto narrativo que también escribí para ella. La desconocida, para Katy. La conocí una tarde cualquiera, ¿qué más da? Y en ese mismo instante me la eché al bolsillo, entera, incluso en el bolsillo que estaba roto, que sigue roto, entera me la eché. Fue como echarse a la boca entero uno de esos frutos maduros, bien maduros, a punto de pudrirse, que de casualidad uno se encuentra a la mano bajo la caricia de un sol ardiente. Me la eché al bolsillo, me la eché a la boca, toda entera, de pies a cabeza, me la eché. Y desde ese instante no he podido dejar de soñar. Entrega de manos. Siempre admiré las manos de Katy, grandes, muy grandes, para Katy. Todo lo que tenía lo entregaba, lo multiplicaba, lo daba a manos llenas, tantas veces y tantas veces tantas, que poco a poco se fue convirtiendo en manos, solo manos, unas manos enormes, difíciles de imaginar, tan grandes y más grandes que todas las manos juntas de todos los ogros y monstruos y gigantes y matones de los cuentos de horror. Una mano al anochecer que apaga todas las luces, una a una y se entrega. Una mano al amanecer que enciende todas las luces, una a una y se entrega. Un amanecer de manos, una noche de manos, una entrega de manos, en cada uno de los correos diarios, todos los correos, todas las entregas. Las manos de ella, las manos suyas, sus manos, las manos del pan, las manos de la última gota de sangre, las manos del amor, las manos maravillosas que un día pudieron ser tus manos, las tuyas, las de ella, pero que nunca fueron y que nunca podrán ser. Y leo el tercer poema dedicado a ella, se llama Delta del Nilo. A ella le gustaban mucho los gatos. Desde antes del comienzo de los tiempos, mucho antes de haber nacido y crecido y amado, ella ya era el más bello de todos los gatos egipcios, el ideal, el gato por mandato divino, el gato perfecto, el que aún sigue ebrio en las piernas desnudas del amante del César, del amante del Nilo, del amante de la primera película de horror. El gato que se levanta de su esfinge y se estira y se hace más grande, más gato, hasta tocar el sol, la sangre quemada, los últimos detritus del amor. Y entonces sí, mucho antes del comienzo de los tiempos, e incluso mucho más que antes, el gato se tira en la cama sin entrañas, bien vacío, vaciado, desgatado, a digerir sus sueños, su obra, su gato, su nada. Y el mundo, que hasta ese instante había sido redondo, vientre, golpe seco de intimidad, de pronto se vuelve línea, solo horizonte, bandadas de puntos suspensivos, puntas de flechas, hileras de ojos, hileras infinitas, hileras sin comienzo, hileras sin fin, hileras sin tiempo, hileras sin hileras, noches donde solo se escuchan los pasos del silencio, manos que se pierden y se entregan en el abismo, solo el amanecer de sus manos enormes como la muerte, el gato todavía ebrio y cada vez más loco en el sexo desnudo del amante del Nilo, del amante de los detritus, del amante de la primera película de amor. Gracias.
We'll continue now with the reading of one of Kathy's favorite cantigas, number 351. This is how Holy Mary replenished the wine in the cask of Arconada, a village near Palencia. She whom God so richly blessed when he chose to be born of her can well bless and increase other things. Concerning this, I shall tell you a very beautiful miracle which Holy Mary performed, as I found to be true, in the church of Arconada, a village I know to be near Palencia. Now sit back and listen to it. On her feast day in August, many people come to this place to hear all the canonical hours, and it is the custom for them to bring bread and wine on carts and distribute it for the love of her to anyone who will partake. Whereby it happened, not long ago, that a great crowd of people assembled there for that feast, and each and every one was bent on having a good time. Anyone who knew how to wrestle, wrestled, and anyone who knew any good spicy stories recited them. Others ran cows, which they later had killed and cooked, and great cauldrons, and gave them to the poor to eat. With all this merriment, perforce the wine began to diminish, because the consumption of it was great. Although they were eating well, they did not think that there was anything if they could not drink their fill of good wine. However, it was running low, as always happens, because where they take and do not replace, it is bound to run out. They drained a great cask full of wine, so dry that except for the wood, nothing of it was left. Then they all said, "If the Virgin does not come to our aid, we may be lost for want of this good wine." Therefore the crowd of people was ready to leave, but a good man came upon them and said to them, "Let's take a look at the cask and pull the bottom bung out of it, and by chance there might be a little bit left." Then that crowd of people went up to the cask, and the man who had told them this looked in the top and found it completely full, and showed it to the others. Therefore they began to bless the Holy Virgin. Those who had been weeping began to laugh, and they drank that wine and vowed, upon my word, that they had never drunk its like, and like all the sick people who drank it were cured and became healthy. This cantiga, of course, is Kathy's favorite, and we're all smiling because it embodies her spirit, and her personality. Limitless wine, limitless food, and limitless merriment. And dancing.
This is Cantiga 354. How Holy Mary saved from death a little animal they call Donazina. The Virgin Mother of Him who watches over all has mercy on her servants, both great and small. Concerning this, I shall tell a great miracle which the Queen Mother of God, Jesus Christ, performed for a king who had placed all his hopes in her. For she caused him in her mercy to experience sorrow and then great pleasure over a certain matter. This sorrow was for a little beast the Galicians called Donazina, which the king loved dearly and carried with him and cared for tenderly. He hunted birds out of their nest with it, for one sometimes sees ferrets which can do that. It did this and many other clever things, scampering and jumping, at which the king took great delight. Therefore he was so fond of it that he considered that God had done him a great favor in giving it to him. Therefore he made it a pretty little wooden cage in which to keep it, and closed the creature inside, so that no harm could come to it, for he was very afraid of the cat, which can see better at night than in the daytime. Whereby it happened to him one day, while he was riding down a road, that he took the ferret out of the cage. And as it is a very quick animal, it fell under the horse's feet. It happened so quickly that the king cried out in alarm, "Holy Mary, have mercy. Save my little ferret, and do not let death take it from me." All those who were there were very distressed, because the king's horse had stepped hard, and the king said, "Oh, men, Who can see it? Give it back to me, however you find it, be it dead or alive, and I shall console myself with it as one who is inconsolable. Then Holy Mary, who is gateway to heaven, caused it to come out from under the hoof alive by his great mercy. Then all who were there and saw such a wondrous miracle, which the glorious Lady, who is Mother and Daughter of God, performed by causing the horse which treads so heavily with its hoof not to kill it, the one who watches over all this, to please the glorious Lady, his mother, to whom the king had commended the ferret, when it was crushed by the hoof of the horse. Therefore, may he be blessed and she be praised, and may they both shed their grace and mercy on us forevermore.
We're going to continue the celebration, and I'm going to read a letter that we received from Janine Barta. Professor Barta is an emeritus at York University in Toronto, Canada, and she's a medievalist with special research interests in Gonzalo de Berceo poetry. So this is what she wrote in honor of Kathy. I first met Kathleen Kulp-Hill at a late afternoon pre-UK foreign language conference gathering at Professor John S. Keller's home in April of 2002. For me, it was indeed a privilege to be included in what I later discovered was a selected group of medieval Spanish professors, all of them former students of John Keller's. I came into the group as an outsider, having only become acquainted with John in January of 1998, when he asked me to translate some of Berceo's work as part of a complete works of Berceo project he was coordinating. Already by the time, I had been engaged in and had completed the translation of 3 of Berceo's work, and therefore, I had a keen and deep appreciation of those who I met that day, who were also engaged in labors of translation. Kathy, in particular, impressed me greatly as one of those translators. She had already completed and had published the translation of the monumental work Las Cantigas de Santa Maria. With the publication of this truly gigantic medieval composition, Kathy made a major contribution to serious scholarship. But when I met her that day, and at the many UK foreign language conference I attended in the succeeding years, what probably impressed me most about Kathleen was her totally modest, unassuming, unpretentious personality. Here was someone who had accomplished something of a miracle with her splendid translation of the numerous miracles of the Holy Mary. And yet she will never outwardly display what a truly talented and accomplished scholar she was. Each spring that I attended this conference, I made it a point never to miss out on any paper Kathleen happened to be delivering at the conference. And I was always amply and unfailing rewarded for time spent listening to her profound insights into whatever theme of Spanish medieval literature she chose to speak about. In fact, never once did I come away from hearing one of Kathy's papers without feeling truly stimulated by some aspect of her paper. I always want that to follow this up with some further research on whatever Kathy had said to stir my imagination and interest. In this regard, I humbly admit that Kathy was invariably more diligent than I was, and next spring, there she was back again with yet another insightful contribution to our field of medieval literature. Kathleen will faithfully attend every paper given by other colleagues of ours, and then never fail to gather together with all of us for the post-conference gathering, which took place in later years at the home of John Keller's daughter and son-in-law, Lori and Bill. However, she didn't like driving at night, and so we all missed her company at the dinner, which regularly took place in the evening. But what a participant and how supportive Kathy was. She has been greatly esteemed and valued by all in her field. It is truly appropriate that we will be honoring Kathy today at this gathering for her outstanding scholarship and simple for the very fine human being that she is.
Good afternoon, everyone. People often say that actions speak more than words. It only follows that if we want to judge a person's character, you look at more than what she or he says. You look at what she or he says. Dr. Hill knew that to make Cantigas of Santa Maria a timely and significant example for contemporary society, it would take more than translation of words. So she personally took actions. She knew that translating Cantigas of Santa Maria, such a rich fountain of inspiration for teachers as well as students, would not be enough to bring that work to fruition. So she personally, and in a humble way, shared with her colleagues, students, and friends her knowledge and long life research on the Cantigas of Santa Maria. Today, we honor Dr. Hill for those tireless efforts and remarkable fruits of hers as a scholar. But we also pay tribute to her for much more. We pay tribute to the excellent teacher, colleague, and friend she had shown herself to be constantly through her words and her actions. In the 10 years I had been teaching in the Department of Foreign Languages and Humanities of Eastern Kentucky University, Dr. Kathy Hill has been a shining example of professionalism, ethic, and higher standard teaching for me and for other colleagues. I particularly consider her to be my mentor and role model in the fulfillment of my duties as a teacher, server, and scholar. As Spanish teachers, Dr. Hill and I always had very fruitful and rewarding conversations on teaching methods, techniques, and in classroom strategies to help students with their language difficulties. Also, we often exchanged teaching materials such as books, exams, teaching resources, and in-classroom exercises for Spanish as second language, as well as Spanish literature and culture. Moreover, she was the first person I usually asked for advice when I wanted to improve my students' study techniques. In the area of service to the university, Dr. Hill was also to be my mentor. Especially, she trained me to be an academic advisor, one of the academic advisors of my department. She not only shared with me her knowledge and experience in that area of advising, but also taught me how to help students to discern on what is best for their learning. As a scholar, I am highly grateful to Dr. Hill for her time to proofreading my letters, articles, and presentations written in English, for her support and enthusiasm to my creative works and scholarly achievements, and for her encouragement to sharing with me her knowledge and experience on the Cantigas of Santa Maria. I first got acquainted with the Cantigas de Santa Maria in 1976 when I had to analyze Psalm 425, Alegría, Alegría, for my musical analysis class at the Conservatory of Music in my home country. At that time, I was concerned about the musical aspect of the Cantigas of Santa Maria as composition, as music composition only. However, throughout the next 20 to 25 years, I have been more and more attracted to get immersed into the craft of the Cantigas as a threefold masterpiece. That is, to study how words, music, and iconography have been composed in order to teach and entertain people. Dr. Hill, knowing about my interest in Cantigas de Santa Maria as well as my interdisciplinary research on the relationship between music and poetry, encouraged me to take a closer look at the cantigas. Guided by her inspiration and encouragement, I undertook the task to study cantigas of Santa Maria in more detail. As a result of that endeavor, in April 2010, I had the privilege to give a joint presentation with Dr. Hill at the Kentucky Foreign Languages Conference of University of Kentucky. That presentation was on Cantiga 323, one of her favorite cantigas. My part of that presentation was about how Alfonso's interdisciplinary and multi-senses approach to teaching indeed could be a model in our contemporary educational environment. Dr. Hill's support of my interdisciplinary analysis and ideas of this cantiga was very important for my presentation as well as for my entire interdisciplinary research. She also understood that with my interdisciplinary approach to the analysis of Cantiga 323, I also convey a pedagogical objective. That is, in order to encourage Spanish professors and students to study medieval literature and culture, it is useful to develop an analytical approach based on the integration of sight, hearing, and meaning presented in the Cantigas of Santa Maria of Alfonso X. Through my collaboration with Dr. Hill in the presentation of Cantiga 323, I was able to learn and demonstrate how cantigas would be an excellent model to inspire teachers as well as students to enhance their learning strategies. Furthermore, during the teaching of my classes 310 Spanish Review Through Technology and Spanish 301 Reading and Culture, I have been able to put into practice the development of such an analytical approach to motivate students to undertake interdisciplinary research not only in medieval period, but also in other periods of world history. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you for your hard work, service, and especially for your life and your love. Thank you for being such an inspiration to me and to many of us. Thank you for being such a great colleague and friend. Your kindness, your loving kindness, warmth, and good humor had continually brightened the halls of our department. All of us here love you and wish you all the happiness you so much deserve. Thank you. This is a letter from Dr. Connie Scarborough. I have known Kathy since my time as a grad student at the University of Kentucky, being first introduced to her at the Kentucky Foreign Languages Conference. When she learned that I, a lowly grad student, was also interested in Alfonso X, she was from then on unfailingly generous in her advice and guidance as I worked on my own investigation of the wise king. We all remember her dutifully copying English translation of cantigas for us before they were printed in the handsome volume that was later published in Arizona. She was not concerned with copyright, but only with bringing Alfonso's remarkable body of work to ever-expanding audiences. I was so very honored when she asked me to write the introduction to the printed translation of the Cantigas de Santa Maria, and I cherished the small part I had in bringing that volume to fruition. Kathy's concerns were to the world of scholarship, and her dedication to her students and colleagues is legendary at EKU. I know, however, that the wise king and all who have studied and appreciated his work will soon be having a tertulia celestial, and that Kathy will be sure that all the cats and the castles are well cared for. Thanks for including my statement in this session. Un abrazo, Connie.
The next letter is from Dr. Annette Cash, who's a medieval and Golden Age specialist at the University of Georgia, honoring Dr. Kathleen Kulp-Hill. Kathy has opened the world of Galician Portuguese Cantigas de Santa Maria to all who understand English. These gems of 13th century poetry in many and diverse meters are one of the world's wonders of world literature, but closed to many of us whose knowledge of Galician Portuguese is deficient or non-existent. Besides the remarkable, accurate, artistic, and fluid translation of the poetry into sparkling English prose, Kathy has included many notes. Cultural notes, like explaining the estadal, which was a long wax candle, the length of a man's outstretched arms or his height. This type of candle is frequently mentioned in the text as a pledge or offering and depicted in the miniatures of the cantigas. Historic and geographic references to religious orders, dates of events, locales, and personages like Recesvinth, who was the 28th king of the Visigoths and ruled from 653 to 672, are on almost every page. Also, there are critical annotations regarding verse, rhyme, and references to other authors or works, like Gonzalo de Bercero. 17 of his 25 milagros are recognized as earlier versions of cantigas. These observations truly make this time frame come alive for us and enhance our reading and understanding of this magnificent magnum opus. Kathy has spent more than 20 years translating, editing, and perfecting this monumental work. Before the monograph was published, Kathy was often asked by those working on the cantigas for her translations. She would copy them and send them worldwide to anyone who requested them. As the increasing interest in the cantigas became apparent, the perfect press for the work, the Arizona Center for Medieval and Renaissance Texts and Studies, published Kathy's translation of the 420 poems. The fact that this university press would reprint one of their titles is proof enough of the importance, popularity, and prestige of the Songs of Holy Mary of Alfonso X, the Wise. They often say that faithful translations are ugly, meaning that the faithfulness has taken away from the artistic value of the work. And of course, the most perfect translations are faithful and beautiful, which is exactly what Kathy has achieved. She has been very careful with her choice of words and found the mot juste in every instance. The reason she has produced such a superb translation is because of the effort she put into the work, and because she has been able to critically reread each translation dozens of times and note any inconsistency, error, or incomplete thought. It is extremely hard to edit one's own work, but Kathy has done a magnificent job. When one translates, it is important to weigh each word, comparing the meanings in the source and target languages, so as not to add any fortuitous implication or have the word not carry all of the important impact of the original text. If a loss of meaning occurs, it is the translator's task to compensate for that loss in another part of the text so that the audience receives, as much as possible, a complete understanding of the original text. Kathy has done this so well. You feel that you are really hearing or reading the original text and relating to it here and now. Translators become one with the text, and that sensitivity is what makes the translation so viable and honest. Reading a text and translating it are so very different. A reader understands the text, but a translator analyzes, parses, reads the text aloud, and feels the rhythm of the whole. The translator takes the surface meaning of the target language down to the underlying meaning with all of its nuances, transfers the nuanced meaning to the surface meaning of the target language, and checks to make sure that nothing of major importance has been omitted. This process takes time and many hours of work, research, and dedication. That is what Kathy has given us with this work. In Cincinnati, when we celebrated the first printing of the Songs of Holy Mary of Alfonso X, the Wise, The entire audience gave Kathy a standing ovation after many had offered praise and encomiums, while we breathed sighs of relief that this monumental work was finally available in a language we understood much better than Galician Portuguese. I imagine that this audience will also give Kathy a standing ovation for the second printing. Kudos to Kathy and my most sincere regret at not being able to be here. On a more personal note, in December, I asked Kathy if she would read a manuscript I had done with a colleague on the first 24 cantigas of the beautiful Códice Rico manuscript, TI-1, of the Escorial, and hoped she might write a foreword for it. She did so with tremendous dedication, critical acumen, and magnificent suggestions. I feel sure that she was not feeling well at this time, and despite this, she gave her full attention to this work on the cantigas. I don't know if the press that I sent the manuscript to has decided to publish it, but I do know with Kathy's help and attention, it certainly has a better possibility of being published. Kathy did write the foreword, and it is excellent. I am so very grateful to her for her help, her friendship over the years, and send her prayers and grateful appreciation for her admirable contribution to Spanish medieval literature. Annette Cash.
I first met Dr. Hill in August of 1990 when I began my Spanish studies at Eastern Kentucky University. She was assigned to be my advisor, and the following year she also became my professor for Spanish 201 and 202. Dr. Hill would always take lots of time out for me so I would be successful in all and to be on the right track. On the rare occasion she did not know something about a certain class, she would always make many phone calls to the secretary of the dean's office or to the education department to find out the answers before giving me advice about what classes I needed. She did this not only for me but countless others, even those that were not her advisees. One thing Dr. Hill was known to have were plenty of handouts that she personally had made because the books were sometimes just plain insufficient or inadequate. I once had asked her why didn't she write her own textbook, and she simply replied that no one would buy it because it would be too logical, she said. I believe her. She had a large gray cabinet with many, maybe it was kind of green, many thick copies of grammar-related topics such as the passive voice, verb practice sheets, and my favorite were the refranes and proverbs that we studied and talked about during class. Más vale perder un minuto en esta vida que tu vida en un minuto. No es oro todo lo que reluce, y camarón que se duerme se lo lleva a corriente. Some of life's best lessons came from her short stories and those refrains that have remained with me for years. I can remember on one occasion that I went to see Dr. Hill on a very pretty day in the old Kamek building. Most of the classes and offices were located on the very top floor with huge glass windows. Ms. Hill was sitting at her desk and telling me about a tornado that passed through Richmond in 1974 and demolished many parts of the city area. And it was one of the worst storms ever to occur in Richmond in those parts. As Dr. Hill was telling me this story, I could see behind her and in front of me what was happening outside the thick panes of glass. It suddenly became dark and windy, just as Dr. Hill was describing in her story of 1974. It was as if Dr. Hill had somehow summoned the weather to whip up, and it did this, and my eyes were growing bigger and bigger. The rain was as thick as white milk, and the sirens then started to scream out. I was trying to look interested in what Dr. Hill was telling me, but the weather was getting worse. But I didn't want to be rude to Dr. Hill, and so I just sat there and let her keep talking. Then suddenly Dr. Hill said to me, "I think we need to start moving or making our way down to the basement, don't you?" I said, "Oh, yes, that's a great idea." We slowly went down the large windows and then down toward the windows, and then the downstairs floor, the door flew open, and as we were going through next to the windows, We stayed down in the basement with the other students and teachers for several hours. And as it turned out, we had several tornadoes to touch down in Richmond that day. I'm telling you this so you can have some idea what a great storyteller Dr. Hill was and how the weather would even follow her stories in amazement. Speaking of storms, as some may recall the ice storm that hit in Kentucky in January of 2009. Well, I didn't have electricity for several days, but I finally had my dad to bring up a generator from London after spending several days without any kind of electricity. Power was finally restored, and I had been calling Dr. Hill every night to see how she was holding out. She had a very sick cat at the time, and she was looking after it. I'd asked her to come over and stay with me since I had power now. Finally, she accepted my invitation, and I told her to bring her cat. But she had informed me that her cat had passed away that night. I had turned on the television set, and we watched a reality television show. I don't think Dr. Hill knew what that was. But I went to the kitchen, and I had found my roommate's bottle of red wine under the cabinet. And the two of us had spent all night talking about my new Kindle, drinking red wine, and watching reality TV while we had heat and not a care in the world. We had such a great time that I regretted for her electricity coming on so early. We stayed up late talking. In 2010, my older brother was diagnosed with cancer, and Dr. Hill would call me almost daily to see how he was doing and how my parents were holding up. She asked me what could she send them that my parents would like, and I told her she didn't have to send anything. She sent them a set of wind chimes that had not just a few, but 100 tiny bells on them. They were thoughtful and they were very pretty. This past year, I had a friend named Jane who passed away from stomach cancer. And again, Dr. Hill was there for me and always asking about how she was doing. It was a very difficult time for me. She told me several years ago that the reason that it hurts when someone is ill or when they pass is because we do love. I think about her words during this time of her illness, and it comforts me a little. I will miss, going to her office and talking to her on the phone and going to the airport to see her family in Kansas and always going to McDonald's. Last year, Dr. Hill asked me to work on the drawings for her new edition. She asked that we keep the original drawings by Charles Nelson, and so I told her that I could do a watercolor pencil to be true to the original as much as possible. She agreed, and she submitted them shortly before her last summer trip to Kansas of 2012. She said she was very pleased, and I called her this past Wednesday. She told me to tell everyone that she was very proud of her book and the cover. I had her book in the car in the front seat, and I told her that I had been reading the book. I was driving her to Lexington for some scans, and without a beat, she says, "Well, is that a good book or not?" I looked at her and I laughed and I said, "Yes, it's a pretty good book." Thank you, Dr. Hill.
I'm going to read a letter that we got from Professor Terry Mount. Dr. Mount is also a medievalist with research interest in Gonzalo de Berceo and Alfonso el Sabio. He has multiple publication and translation of the works of Berceo, and he wrote this for Kathy. It is impossible to express what Kathy Hill's friendship and contribution have meant to me in my professional career. Her works, Songs of Holy Mary, the monumental translation of Alfonso X's Cantigas de Santa Maria, has opened up many possibilities in my own research and teaching efforts. I have observed firsthand and always been impressed by Kathy's mentoring the younger scholars, and I have had the pleasure of discussing with her on various occasions the state of higher education. Her support of and scholarly participation in conferences, especially the Kentucky Foreign Language Conference, invariably refresh us, opening our eyes to new insights, new ways of looking at things. Kathy, you are to be congratulated for your long and distinguished career, for the labor of love that is your translation of Alfonso's collection of Marian Miracle, which we will now have in its second edition. This one word truly is a reflection of love, a love not only for the work and its creator, but also for scholarship in general, which in the long run is like a gift to all of us. Thank you, Kathy. And I'm going to read a poem of Rosalía de Castro. It is in Gallego, so I'll do my best. And also I'm going to read the translation that Manuel gracefully did in Spanish. So I hope that you enjoy it. Dende aqui vejo caminho que não sei aonde vai, polo mesmo que não sei, quixera o poder andar. Estreitinho serpenteia entre prados e navals, e anda o feito aqui escondido, relumbrando mais alá, mas sempre, sempre tentando-me, com seu lindo clarear, que eu penso, não sei porquê, nas vilas que correrá, nos carvalhos que o sombream, nas fontes que o regarão, caminho, caminho branco, não sei para onde vas, mas cada vez que te vejo, quisiera poder-te andar. Já colhas para Santiago, já colhas para o portal, já em San Andrés te detenhas, já chegues a San Cirad, já enfim te perdas, quem sabe en donde, que mais me dá, que ojalá en ti me perdera, para nunca mais me atopar, mas te vas indo, sempre para donde vas, e eu quedo encravada em onde arraigo tem o meu mal. Nem fujo, non, que aunque fuja de lugar a outro, de mí misma nadie me libertará. And here's the Spanish translation. Desde aquí veo camino que yo no sé a dónde va, y es porque no lo sé que quisiera andar por él. Estrechito serpentea entre prados y entre nabos, y yo aquí quedo escondido, relumbrando más allá. Mas siempre, siempre tentándome con su bello clarear, que pienso y no sé por qué, en los pueblos que pasará, en los robles que le dan sombra, en las fuentes que va a regar. Camino, camino blanco, no sé para dónde vas, pero cada vez que te veo quisiera poderte andar. Ya cojas para Santiago, ya cojas para el portal, ya en San Andrés te detengas, ya llegues a San Sidrán, ya en fin sea que te pierdas, ¿quién sabe a dónde? ¿Qué más me da? Que ojalá en ti me perdiera y que nunca me vuelva a hallar, mas te vas yendo, siempre para donde vas, y yo me quedo clavado, donde me arraigo es del mal. O huyo, no, porque aunque huya de un lugar a otro, de mí misma nadie me podrá librar.
This letter is from Abraham Vélez, who's a professor at EKU in the Department of Religion and Philosophy. Con esta breve carta quisiera expresar mi más profunda gratitud, admiración y respeto por la profesora Kathy Hill. No es nada exagerado afirmar que sin la ayuda desinteresada de la profesora Hill, el inglés de mi libro, The Buddha and Religious Diversity, published by Routledge 2013, dejaría mucho que desear. De hecho, los editores de la editorial Routledge prácticamente no tuvieron ningún trabajo porque la labor editorial de Kathleen Hill fue excepcional. Además de su profesionalidad como editora, quisiera destacar el compañerismo y la generosidad de Kathy. Yo siempre quise pagar a Kathy por su trabajo minucioso de revisión editorial. Sin embargo, ella siempre se negó a aceptar cualquier tipo de remuneración pecuniaria. Desesperado y sorprendido por su insistencia de no aceptar ninguna compensación económica por su trabajo, un día le pregunté que por qué me estaba ayudando por amor al arte, es decir, sin cobrar nada. La respuesta de Kathy no se me olvidará nunca. Me dijo que sencillamente lo hacía por compañerismo, porque yo también era profesor de EKU. Quisiera aclarar que la ayuda prestada por Kathy, simplemente por ser su compañero, no fue insignificante. No estoy hablando de editar un artículo o un escrito breve que se podría haber leído y corregido en un fin de semana, sino más bien de un libro académico con más de 100,000 palabras. Para mí, Kathy ejemplifica todo aquello que un profesor de universidad debiera ser. Un gran profesional, un buen compañero y una magnífica persona. Ojalá que abunden mucho los profesores como ella. Mil gracias, profesora Kathy Hill. Abraham.
I have a letter from two of her nieces, Anne and Rhonda. They were nieces from Kathy's sister Ruth. Our early memory of Aunt Katie is absolute rapture when we saw the light blue Volkswagen Bug coming down the driveway for a long summer visit. We couldn't wait for her to arrive and would get so excited when she drove in. She first brought with her a cat named Niebla. Then later was Uncle Leon and Nellie, her golden lab. I think we were a bit jealous of Uncle Leon, having to share Aunt Katie with him, but we soon grew to love him too. So many memories flood in, it's hard to know where to start. We always thought Aunt Katie just belonged with us on the farm in Kansas, and we still do. It's funny what comes to your mind. Anne remembers being forced to take naps against her will when she was really little, and Aunt Katie reading Don Quixote to her in Spanish to lull her to sleep. It worked. And as a little girl, waking up during Aunt Katie visits and crying loudly on purpose just to have her come carry her downstairs. When Aunt Katie was with us at Christmas time, she would make luminaries when the Kansas wind permitted and place them on either side of the sidewalk south of our house. They were beautiful and awesome. And we would make wonderful sugar cookies together using animal cookie cutters. Aunt Katie would mix different colors with egg whites, and we would have the most beautifully painted sugar cookies, almost too pretty to eat. In summer evenings, when we walked up the pasture lane to the pond and listened to the frogs, sometimes we'd walk on up to the high point of the pasture and look across the hills to the north and east towards her Grandpa Culp's farm in Indian Hill, then walk on to the lower place pond, a little further to the north. Very special times spent in a very beautiful place. We took only 2 vacations when we were little, since it was hard for Dad to get away from the farm chores, and both were to see Aunt Katie and Uncle Leon. The first was to Gold Hill in Colorado, and was the first time we girls had ever seen the mountains. We were driven around in search of bears, trolls, and of course gold. And we thought later how Aunt Katie and Uncle Leon were the greatest people on earth. Several years later, we went to see them again when they lived at Paint Lick, Kentucky, and had another indescribably wonderful time. It still all seems so magical. Once, Dad accidentally cut off a tomcat's foot while mowing alfalfa, and of course we were all devastated. Aunt Katie bandaged and nursed him back to health, and he was given the name Hopscotch for the rest of his many happy years. There were always cats to be petted and kittens to be found in the milk barn loft with Aunt Katie in the lead. One summer, not too long ago, while visiting Aunt Rhonda's home in Riley, a feral mother cat had brought in a litter of kittens. One in particular was suffering from a lung ailment. While Rhonda was at work, Aunt Katie captured the kitten and took her to the vet to be checked out. Sadly, the decision had to be made for the vet to put her down. But again, Aunt Katie took the lead, made the arrangements, and made sure the vet bill was paid too. And we have to mention the designer Barbie doll clothes created by Aunt Katie, as well as numerous doll, bear, troll, and little other girl apparel. She could make clothes out of any piece of material and could draw pictures of anything we wanted her to. Aunt Katie also supplied us with wonderful books and art and offered constant encouragement to develop our music, not because we had to, but because it was a gift and because it was beautiful. It was a blessing for Annie, along with husband Mike and son Lucas, to take Aunt Katie along with them on a trip to Colorado a few years back. Aunt Katie made the cool aunt list, having shared the back seat with a 16-year-old boy the entire way. They all loved seeing the mountains again together. We cherish the memories of growing up with our Aunt Katie and having her so much a part of our lives. And she has shared her love with our children, creating more special memories of Aunt Katie visits, just as it should be. We love you, Aunt Katie, now and always. And I love you too.
Thank you. We're gonna close our session with a short story written by Manuel.
Vuelvo y repito que todos sabíamos de su amor grande por los animales, por todos los animales, por las cosas simples de la vida, por las cosas sencillas. E indudablemente todos sabemos y sabíamos y seguiremos sabiendo por mucho tiempo su amor por los gatos. Muchas cosas que he escrito, literarias, ella me las inspiró. Hay mucha imaginación, hay muchas cosas exactamente de su vida, pero creo que la imaginación a veces es mucho más poderosa que la realidad. Este es un cuento que escribí para ella, se llama Con el amor a cuestas, para Katy. Los gatos habían sido hechos para ella y ella para ellos. Si pudiéramos estar en la mente de todos y de cada uno de estos felinos, en sus manos ya no tan felinos, podríamos afirmar que desde el comienzo de los tiempos o de su especie, ella ya los había conocido y amado y amamantado y acariciado uno a uno desde mucho antes del comienzo de los tiempos. Les había dado un nombre, el apropiado, el exacto, el que siempre había soñado y que le había permitido soñar. Aparecía y desaparecía como tocada a cada instante por un conjuro extraño o una promesa que no podía dejar de cumplir. Un peso de esos que circulan con la sangre y que la sangre misma liviana y hace volar sin que tengamos alas y ni siquiera ganas de volar. Unas veces estaba allí donde estaban los suyos, sus elegidos, sus escogidos, su rebaño ideal, y otras se repetía como un fantasma ya casi incoloro e inodoro, donde quiera que fuese que hubiera uno de ellos perdido o abandonado o enfermo o maltratado. Allí estaba ella, nunca faltaban sus manos, cada vez más grandes de tanto amor. Los alimentaba a manos llenas y a manos llenas los acariciaba, les hablaba y se divertía con ellos. Y pasaba las noches con todos ellos, los que estaban y los que no, los que eran y los que todavía no eran, los que se habían ido sin que por lo mismo se hubiesen marchado definitivamente, incluso los muertos, todos ellos, como si su cuerpo fuera un imán que los atraía y los congregaba y los nacía a todos, a cada uno de ellos, a la hora de su amor, a la hora de sus caricias, a la hora del pan. Era delgada como una brisa y tenue y casi inexistente, como el soplo de un enfermo ya perdido en sus últimos sueños, los ojos hundidos, las mejillas altas, las caderas estrechas y pequeñas, las piernas largas y como si le nacieran en las axilas, y tenía el cuello a la manera de los lagartos, y como ellos una mirada acaballada en el crepúsculo de un muro desconchado. Si había tenido senos, ya la habían abandonado o ya se le habían consumido de tanto amor, de tanto pan, de tantas manos, de tantas noches en vela, y de las nalgas solo le quedaba el vago recuerdo de un amor que se marchó demasiado pronto. Desde el primer instante que la conocí, tuve miedo de que en cualquier instante pudiera desaparecer, hacerse humo, aire, eco, apenas un rumor, una sonrisa apenas, una sílaba a medias, ni siquiera una sombra. También me atemorizaba el presentimiento, cada vez más presente e intenso, de que para ella yo no fuera más que uno de sus gatos, y más aún, me ponía los pelos de punta y la piel de espanto el solo pensamiento de no saber cuál de todos, ¿Cuál de ellos? ¿Cuál de tantos? Y como nunca me llamó por mi nombre, llegué incluso a tener pesadillas con la idea de que me había asignado un nombre secreto que se guardaba solo para ella y que a mí también me acariciaba y me decía palabras de amor y me daba mi ración diaria de pan. Un día encontré un libro sobre gatos y zodiacos en una librería de segunda mano. No recuerdo nada del título exacto. Estaba en perfectas condiciones y tenía unos dibujos que cualquier dibujante que se respete hubiera querido haber dibujado. Lo compré y esa misma tarde se lo llevé a la casa. Lo recibió con un placer indescriptible. La miré y me miró fijamente y por un momento sus ojos parecieron salirse de su escondite y mirarme y reconocerme y decir mi nombre en silencio por primera vez desde lo más recóndito de su amor. Me la encontré al día siguiente sin proponérmelo y sin que ella se lo propusiera, cosas que los que saben llaman el azar, lo fortuito, el destino, la fatalidad. Sin embargo, cuando la vi a mi lado, como si siempre hubiese estado a mi lado, tuve el presentimiento de que la cita ya había sido concertada desde antes del comienzo de los tiempos. Me miró lenta a los ojos con un placer que yo nunca en mi vida he vuelto a ver en otros ojos, ni siquiera en los ojos del amor. Y me describió con una precisión endemoniada el signo que le correspondía a cada uno de sus gatos. Escucharla hablar de las características, carencias, cualidades y sueños de cada uno de ellos era como participar de un número de magia exquisito. Armar con los ojos cerrados un rompecabezas de difícil ejecución. Era como sabernos vivos por primera vez y por primera vez conocer lo desconocido. Era como si hubiésemos entrado de un solo golpe en los territorios de la felicidad. Recuerdo que antes de marcharse me dijo: nunca antes me habían dado un regalo tan hermoso y no creo que nunca más me lo vayan a hacer. Y sin que yo me diera cuenta, ya no estaba. Solo había quedado en lo fortuito el hueco de sus ojos flotando en lo más hondo y jugoso de mi felicidad. Solo su mirada, sin tiempo, el nombre que nunca me dijo, se quedaron conmigo hasta que ya no pude más y eché a correr, temeroso de que en un segundo iba a saltar por los aires, hecho pedazos. Hoy está enferma de muerte. De repente se le ha acabado la respiración, los pómulos salientes, sus caderas, la cicatriz de sus senos. Un lagarto ya casi nada al atardecer sobre el borde de un muro abandonado. Ella sabe que se va a morir y los gatos también lo saben. Y uno a uno, congregados a su alrededor, esperan la hora final, su propia hora, la hora del amor definitivo, la hora definitiva de sus caricias definitivas, de su último trozo de pan. Ella los reconoce a todos, los llama a todos por su nombre, los que están y los que no están, y los que se fueron, más aún que los que han acudido a su última cita, el último nombre, la última mirada, ya casi perdida en los socavones del dolor, de la tristeza, de las noches en blanco. Habla con ellos y ellos le hablan y le imploran y pareciera que en cada palabra ríos de esperanza invadieran el cuarto donde el silencio poco a poco va acuñando su última moneda. Y cuando ya parece que sus ojos se borran definitivamente y sus caricias huyen a manos llenas como fantasmas aterrorizados, uno a uno, las bestias se van acomodando sobre los últimos vestigios de su cuerpo desnudo, un lagarto demasiado largo y delgado, dormido en una cama angosta y sin tiempo. Uno a uno, lentos, como si no pudieran con su propia carga, van subiendo a la cama, uno a uno hasta cubrirla por completo de pies a cabeza, y ahí se quedan, uno a uno, uno a una, para siempre, hipnotizados con su amor, evitando que el frío se apodere de sus despojos, de su último beso, de sus últimas caricias, de su último trozo de pan. Gracias.
Bueno, gracias a todos. Thank you very much, all of you, for your participation. Thank you to all of you that send us your letters. I'm sure that Kathy is going to enjoy these homenaje that we plan for her. We love you, and you will always be in our hearts and our minds. Thank you.
I think the biggest symbol of everything that we see here today is one of gratitude. And that's really the message that we want to convey, that we're very thankful for everything. Thank you.
Dona che tenio por ser